You think a late-night text from a woman you like means she couldn't sleep. It doesn't. The truth is, a woman who texts you after 10 p.m. has already made a decision about you before she picked up the phone. And if you have been reading those messages as casual, as nothing, as just her being friendly, you have been misreading one of the clearest signals in the female communication playbook. And every time you misread it, you respond like a friend. You keep yourself exactly where she does not want you. Today, that changes. Hello and welcome back. I've spent years in research studying female communication psychology, digital behavior patterns, and the specific ways women use technology to signal interest, particularly to men who are no longer in the habit of expecting to receive it. On this channel, we deal in science, in honesty, and in the kind of precision that most relationship content never bothers to deliver. And today's content is for a very specific group of men. If you are in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, if you have been in situations where a woman texted you late at night and you filed it under friendly or nothing to read into, this conversation is going to reframe experiences you have already had. Stay with me. Here's the belief most men in their 40s and 50s carry without knowing they carry it. Interest announces itself directly or it doesn't exist. If a woman is interested, she says so. If she doesn't say so, she isn't. That belief was outdated 30 years ago. In the digital communication era, it is completely obsolete, and it is costing men at your stage of life connections they have already earned the right to have. Here's what we understand about communication timing from the research. The hour at which someone chooses to reach out is not accidental. During the day, people communicate out of necessity, habit, and obligation. Practical messages, logistics, responses to things that need handling. After a certain hour, the noise of obligation goes quiet. The messages that get sent in the late evening are the ones that reflect what the person is actually thinking about, not what they need to handle. Dr. Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas, one of the leading researchers on communication and relationship development, has documented through his communicate bond belong theory that the time we spend communicating with someone and the nature of that communication is a meaningful investment signal. When someone chooses to spend their private, unstructured evening time reaching out to you, that choice reflects something real about where you sit in their mind. In plain language, you don't text someone late at night because you remembered something logistical. You text them because you were thinking about them and you couldn't not reach out. She thought about you, and then she acted on it. Not every late-night text carries the same weight. Here is how to read them with precision. Type 1. The random recall. This is the text that appears to have no obvious prompt. No question she needed answered. No follow-up to something you discussed earlier. Just a thought, a memory, an observation sent your way after the day has ended. This song just came on and I thought of you. I was reading something earlier that reminded me of what you said last week. Random, but I just thought of that story you told me. The word random is doing significant work in texts like these. She knows it isn't random. She is using the word as a social hedge, a way of reaching out while preserving the option to retreat if you don't respond with warmth. Research on relational uncertainty in communication, developed by Dr. Leanne Knobloch at the University of Illinois, whose decades of work examines how people communicate when they are uncertain about a relationship's status or trajectory, has found that relational uncertainty consistently predicts indirect communication behavior. Her research, including a 2004 study published in Communication Research, found that the more uncertain someone is about a relationship, the more they tend toward indirect rather than direct communication. When people feel genuine interest but carry uncertainty about whether that interest is reciprocated, they approach rather than declare. They signal rather than announce. The hedge is not disinterest. It is self-protection in the presence of real feeling. What she is saying with that random text is, you entered my private mental space, the quiet place after the day ends, without being invited. I'm telling you that. The correct response is not a dry reply. It is a warm, unhurried one that signals you received what she actually sent. Type 2. The extended conversation opener. This one is less ambiguous but still consistently misread by men at your stage of life because it often begins casually. She texts you something simple. You respond. She responds. And then something happens. The conversation doesn't end. It continues. It deepens. It moves from the surface topic into something more personal. And it happens after 10 p.m., when both of you should, by rights, have better things to do. That extended late-night conversation is not coincidence. It is construction. She is building something with you in the only space that feels private enough to do it. The quiet hours when the performing of daily life has stopped, and people are simply themselves. Psychologist Dr. Arthur Aaron at Stony Brook University is best known for his research on interpersonal closeness. His 1997 study, published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, demonstrated that sustained, progressively personal conversation reliably produces feelings of closeness between strangers. His research identified the core mechanism as what he and his colleagues called sustained, escalating, reciprocal, personalistic self-disclosure, each person gradually revealing more, building mutual vulnerability, creating a foundation of trust that produces genuine, felt closeness. She is not chatting idly. She is building something, and she chose you to build it with. Type 3, the vulnerability text. This is the most significant of the three, and the one most likely to be completely missed by men who were not taught to recognize it. The vulnerability text is the late-night message in which she shares something real, something she didn't have to share. A worry, a frustration, a small private admission about her day or her life. It is not dramatic. It rarely announces itself as significant, but it carries more weight than almost anything else she could send. Today was harder than I expected. I don't usually say this to people, but I've been thinking about this for weeks. This is probably too much, but I wanted to tell someone who would actually understand. Brené Brown, research professor at the University of Houston, has spent 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and human connection. Her consistent definition across her research is that vulnerability is the willingness to show up and be seen, with no guarantee of outcome, with no control over how what you share will be received. It is, as she describes it, uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure in the service of genuine connection. What this means in practice is that sharing something real with another person, something unguarded, something that could be met with indifference or misunderstanding, is an act of courage. And people generally do not extend that courage to those who are indifferent to them. When she sends you something vulnerable late at night, she is choosing to be open with you specifically. That specificity is the signal. Here is where the science becomes precise and where most relationship content fails to go. Research on communication and relationship development has established that how people communicate is not random. The timing, frequency, and content of contact are reliable markers of relational investment. This is consistent across the body of work by Dr. Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas, whose research on the communicate bond belong theory demonstrates that the amount of time we spend communicating with someone and the nature of that communication predicts how close we feel to them and how much we value the relationship. Hall's friendship research, published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, found that it takes roughly 50 hours of shared time to move from acquaintance to casual friend, 90 hours to reach genuine friendship, and over 200 hours to develop close friendship. Time is the investment signal, and when someone chooses to spend their unstructured evening hours communicating with you, not their working hours, not their obligated social hours, but the private time that belongs only to them. That investment is voluntary, deliberate, and meaningful. This is what late-night texting actually represents in communication terms, the voluntary allocation of private, unperformed time toward connection with you. She is not reaching out because she has to. She is reaching out because, in the hours when she is most honestly herself, you are who she wants to be in contact with. That is not nothing. That is one of the clearest windows into how someone actually feels. I want to speak directly to something now, because it is the piece the research supports, and that most men in their 40s and 50s need to hear plainly. You are not missing these signals because you are unaware. You are missing them because you have been taught over decades to disqualify them. Men in the 40 to 60 demographic who grew up before digital communication existed form their understanding of romantic interest in an era of direct, legible signals. She either said yes or no. She called or she didn't. There was no ambiguous text at 11 p.m. to decode, and so the vocabulary for reading these signals was simply never developed. Add to that the gradual erosion of self-perception that happens in midlife, the quiet accumulation of messages that attraction belongs to younger men, that being noticed is something that happened in the past, and you have a man who has learned, without realizing it, to preemptively dismiss signals that are real, present, and directed specifically at him. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you to read these signals, and today that changes. Let me give you the 5 specific late-night texts that signal genuine interest with their vivid labels so that you carry this vocabulary with you and never miss them again. Any text in which she sends you a thought, a song, an article, a memory, with no practical reason. The delivery itself is the signal. She was in her private mental space, and you were in it with her. She is telling you that by reaching out. How did that thing go today? Or, are you feeling better? Sent after 9 p.m. During the day, this could be polite. At this hour, she has held that question in her mind since earlier and has chosen this moment to ask. The timing converts courtesy into care. The text exchange that refuses to end. One message becomes 20. An hour passes. She could have said goodnight at any point. She didn't. She is choosing to keep you in her evening. And that choice is intentional, even when the conversation itself is light. Something real, shared quietly that she did not need to tell you. She told you anyway. The act of choosing you as the recipient of something private tells you everything about where you sit in her inner world. The goodnight text. The still awake. The just wanted to say message with no clear follow-up. These exist for one reason. She wanted contact with you before the day ended. That want is the signal. Its simplicity does not diminish its clarity. Understanding the signal is half the equation. Responding to it correctly is where the connection either deepens or quietly dissolves. Here is what not to do. Do not respond with pure logistics. Do not reply with a single line that closes the conversation. Do not be so careful about not overstepping that you send nothing back at all. Here is what to do. Receive what was actually sent. If she sent you a song, listen to it. Tell her what it made you feel. If she shared something real, acknowledge the realness of it. Not with analysis, but with warmth. I'm glad you told me that. 4 words. They do enormous work. Match the register. Late-night communication has a specific texture. Slower, more personal, less transactional. Your response should feel like it was written in the same quiet. Not rushed. Not brief in a way that signals disinterest. Present. Hold the conversation open. A woman who texts you late and receives a warm, unhurried response that invites more, not through a direct question but through genuine engagement, will stay in that conversation. She opened the door. Your response tells her whether you are the man who walks through it. Research on relationship development consistently shows that how we respond to bids for connection in early relational stages is one of the strongest predictors of whether those relationships develop. Gottman's foundational research is finding that couples who remain together turn toward each other's bids 86% of the time compared to 33% for couples who divorced, confirms that responsiveness is not incidental. It is the mechanism of connection itself. A warm, present response to a late-night text does not just feel good in the moment. It shapes what happens next. How many late-night texts have you received and dismissed? How many times did a woman reach out to you in the quiet hours, sending a thought or a question or something small and real, and you replied with 2 lines and went to sleep? How many conversations quietly went cold not because she lost interest, but because you didn't yet know that what she sent you was an invitation? Let that settle. Not with regret, with awakening. Because from this point forward, you see it differently. You know what the thought delivery looks like. You know what the soft check-in is actually asking. You know what the extended conversation hold is building and why the pure check exists. Men at your stage of life have something younger men almost never have: the ability to be fully present in a conversation without an agenda, the patience to stay in an exchange and let it develop without rushing it toward an outcome, the emotional groundedness to receive something real and respond to it with genuine warmth rather than performance. Those qualities, the ones that are often invisible to you because you have had them for years, are precisely what make a woman reach for her phone at 11 p.m. and decide that you are the person she wants to send something to. She did not text you by accident. She texted you because, in the quiet space where people are most honest with themselves, you are who she was thinking about. The only question is whether you are paying enough attention to know what that means. From this point forward, you are. I'll see you in the next one.